Alrighty, hey y'all, what's up? Welcome to video 9 of our archery series. Had to think about that one for a minute. Right now we're going to go over kind of the general setup for when you're getting ready to shoot. This scenario we'll be talking about target practice, and then we'll go over some techniques and some little tips and tricks and things like that, and then afterwards we'll get into more of hunting scenarios and things you can do to prepare for a hunting scenario. Those will be all in future videos. So real basic here, we already have our bow. We've already talked about that. We've talked about, you know, the wrist loop, the stabilizers, the sight, the arrow rest, your cables and cams, and we've talked about your peep sight and your all that kind of stuff. We've talked about your clamps here, and we've talked about your little mouthpiece. I can't remember the name of it right now. So we've kind of gone over our bow anatomy, we've gone over our arrow anatomy, and we've gone over a target. So now we're assuming we have everything we need and we understand a little bit about the basics of a bow. And so now we're going to go over the setup. So obviously the first thing you would have to do is know how to hold your bow and know how to nock an arrow. So the first thing we'll go over is how to hold your bow. Most people would probably think that you just go and grab it like this, which you can do, that does work. However, it allows for a lot of room for error, especially when you shoot. Most people like to grip it extra hard when they shoot, which causes a lot of error in their shot. That's why we have the wrist loop. So you put your hand in the wrist loop, you kind of cup your hand to make like a V, put it in, cup it in, and as you can see, the wrist loop totally holds my bow in place, even after the shot. Even if I'm not even holding onto it, it holds it in place. So generally what I recommend is that people don't actually grip the bow when they're shooting. They more or less are pushing it so that they're making sure they're at full draw. Because if you stabilize at full draw and you push, you're going to make sure that you're at full draw, especially when you're hunting and it's cold and you've been there all day. Some people have a tendency to not come to full draw and they let down and they'll shoot under a deer, or they'll shoot but it won't have as much mechanical energy and all that kind of stuff, so it's not good. Some people, like I know my dad, he likes to put it in, make that V, and he just keeps his fingers open just like this. Back when I was shooting tournaments, for some reason I developed this tick where I would still want to grab the bow. If that's the case, you can curl your fingers in, so now you can't grab. You don't really have anything to grab with. So I'll put my hand in, I'll curl my fingers in, so I'm almost like making a fist with an open thumb, and then I'll just push the bow. So I'm here, and I'm just pushing the bow. So my front hand isn't actually grabbing the bow at all. It's just pushing the riser away from me, which helps me to stabilize. And that prevents you from grabbing the bow and wanting to twitch if you just think about just pushing. You're not actually holding it. That's what your wrist loop does. Because when you shoot, there's all this tension, all the tension gets relieved, and the bow, just the natural motion, the momentum of the bow is going to want to go forward. That's what your wrist loop catches. And it's, if you have it tight, which you want it relatively tight, so you can easily get your hand in and out, so that when it pushes forward, you're still right there. So then you can still grab your bow. Okay, so let's look at this through some still images. So you can see here I'm at full draw, and all of the force is through my thumb pad into the bow, making sure I'm at full draw. And now here it's mid-shot, the arrow is just getting released from the string, and the weight is starting to transition from my hand into the strap. Now the arrow has been released, all of the weight is through the strap, all of the force of the bow is through the strap. And as you can see in our last picture here, now all of the force is through the strap. I'm not even really grabbing the bow at all, and the strap is what's keeping the bow on my hand. Okay, so there's a few arrows me shooting, and I kind of focused in on my forehand here. Hopefully it was slow enough you could see it. I'm not sure, my camera only goes to 60 frames a second, but basically when you shoot, if you ever watch really slow-mo videos, I'll try to find some. As I said earlier, you're pushing, you release, catches on the wrist loop, and then it holds your bow there. So that's kind of the general purpose of a wrist loop. My goodness. And that's why you have one basically, so you don't have to actually grab the handle on your riser. You can just kind of push up against it. It allows for more accuracy. It allows for ensuring that you get to a full draw, and it prevents that catch twitch or catch out twitch kind of thing. Nocking an arrow. So there's a couple ways you can do this. It's going to vary based on what arrow rest you have and how many fletches you have. So I'm shooting 3 fletches. Hopefully you guys can see it there. And usually when I fletch my arrows, I always fletch one off color. And with my rest, I have it set so that the off color blade faces down. So then you can see here, I have it nocked. The off color blade is facing down, and then we're all lined up and ready to go. So that's what your crimp up here does, is it holds that arrow in place, because then if you were a release shooter, there'd be another one here and a loop over the top. Because I'm a finger shooter, I just put my fingers right up to the nock. And having the one off color fletch down ensures that all of my arrows, with all of the fletchings and all of the torsion on the fletchings, are going to fly the exact same way, because they're aligned the same way on the bow. Because if I had flipped it over and had it up, it's going to fly differently just based on the orientation of the vanes and the force of the string when it pushes through the arrow. So that's a real quick overview of setup, kind of how you want to hold the bow with your hand, and then kind of how you want to nock your arrow. That again just comes with practice and consistency. When you're first setting your bow up, have somebody who's experienced, like a pro shop member or a good buddy who's been doing it for a little while, help you set up your arrows and the fletching so that they fly well with the release and things like that. And then I guess I'll show you quick here. As a finger shooter, like I said, I draw back with 3. So there's my 3. I'll draw and then drop down to 2. And so that's kind of, my fingers are holding the arrow in place, because I don't shoot release, I don't need that extra crimp there. Quick little side note, just thought of it, never dry fire bow. Just don't do it, it's terrible. All of the energy gets expended into the bow itself and instead of into the arrow, and that's just not good. So hopefully you guys liked this video, hopefully it was helpful for you, hopefully it helped you out a little bit, and yeah, thanks for watching.